Olga Rasmussen, and I want to first of all welcome you all to this session titled Everything You Need to Know, the Healing Power of Crystals. So please bear with me. This is my first Facebook Live session. So hopefully you won't hear any of the noise outside. My neighbors are roofing their house as we speak, but hopefully you won't pick up any of that. So for those of you watching this particular session this evening, I have a little special for you. So you will notice that I have a link to one of my websites, my meditation site, meditationsimple.com. And if you go to the home page there, you will find a spring special, and you'll be able to get my meditation ebook for half price, which is $2.49. So you have to click on that particular spring special link to get that particular price. So for any of you listening today, that is an offer there for you. Before we begin, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. Like many of you, I have an interest in crystals. I think we're all drawn to them. I don't think there's too many people who aren't interested in crystals. I have a doctorate in spirituality and education, and I spent 25 years teaching in academic settings. In addition to having taught in academic settings, and I've been out of that line of work for 15 years, so it's been a long time. I also have taught meditation for over 34, 35, 36 years, I think. So that's a long time. And I've also taught yoga and Reiki for over 22 years. So that's a lot of years of healing and academic work and so forth. So that gives you a little bit of background on me. Also, if you go to my Meditation Simple site, there's more information on me there. That will link you to my main website. And in addition to that, if you go to the healingcrystals.com page, on the home page, there's a section where practitioners are located, and I'm also on that page, and I also offer services there, some ebooks, and also some distance healing sessions. In addition to that, if you go to the healingcrystals.com home page, you will also find an ebook, The Healing Power of Crystals, and this session tonight is based on that. It is a wonderful little primer. It is, if you have no background on crystals, it's a good book to look at. But even if you know a lot about crystals, it's a nice little book to have because it has a wonderful bibliography. So if you want to read more and do more research and know more about crystals, you can go there. So on the healingcrystals.com homepage, you will find the Healing Crystals, the Healing Power of Crystals ebook, and it is offered there for $4.95. So something to keep in mind. Also, at the end of this session, we will do some questions, and I notice right now that some of you people are popping up, and if you would also note where you're popping up from, that would be great, because it would give us an idea of where people are tuning in from and so forth. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the session. So first of all, if you don't know a whole lot about crystals, it's always good to do a little reading. And this is my favorite book. Granted, you're going to be seeing it backwards, but it's called the Crystal Bible. It's a nice little book, as you can see. Very small, basically covers all the basic crystals you'd ever want to know about. And what I like about this book is it tells you the properties of the crystals, and it also has really nice photographs. So, for example, sometimes you see something and you don't know what it is, and it's a really good book to match things up. So keep that in mind. It is one of the books that I mention in the bibliography, but this is my go-to book. In fact, it is literally falling apart. So good book to have. All of you have probably been drawn to crystals throughout the course of your life, and you might have stepped into stores, picked up various pieces that you like. You cannot see this. This is actually my workroom, and it also has a meditation space. But since I am on an iPad and I can't really move it around, you can't see. But right in front of me, there's a shelf with many precious pieces, and I have crystals all over this room. So, for example, right on my desk, I have this nice little quartz that I like to pick up while I'm working. I have a little rose quartz too that I like to pick up, and I have all kinds of pieces, and I'll be referring to some of them as I go along this evening. So your being drawn to crystals is not something that's unique. We all have been drawn to crystals all throughout the centuries. It's very interesting that in archaeological digs, crystals have often been found. We know for a fact that the ancient Egyptians and many of the ancient cultures use crystals in many different ways. Notice that royalty, in their crowns, what do they have? They have all these precious stones encrusted. Wands, you know, people who are shamans, who are healers, have crystals and precious stones and gems encrusted in there. We like to wear jewelry that have precious stones and so forth. So we have always been drawn to those particular kinds of things. And we may be drawn to some more than others. For example, I'm very partial to amethyst. I love purple, and you can't tell, but this room is actually a very light purple in its color. Once it was a very dark purple. So throughout the centuries, people have been drawn to crystals. And again, we find evidence of their use throughout history. Why were crystals used? For example, in the crowns of, royalty and so forth. Yes, they're beautiful, and that was one of the reasons, but also because people surmised and sensed and intuited their inherent power. So there was something to be said for that, and there were, for example, emeralds were stones that I believe only royalty could use. So we see a lot of evidence of that. Let's take a few moments to talk about how crystals are used today. And there's a lot of applications. You know, obviously healers use them in their work. Not all healers, but some healers will use them. You might go to an energy worker, for example, a Reiki healer who may use crystals or not. Crystals have definitely been used in healing work. Shamans, for example, light workers. Why are they used? To enhance the experience, to deepen consciousness. So we see the use of crystals in many different ways. And just want you to know, I made out some notes, so I'm referring to them so that I don't sort of get too far off track. Okay, we already talked about how crystals have been found in many archaeological digs and in temples and, in religious traditions. We find them being used a lot. You look at religious figures such as popes, cardinals, and other individuals who also used them and wore them and so forth. Crystals are one of the reasons that crystals are used, particularly in a more scientific or technological way, is because they can do things such as transduce, transmit, and even change energy. So they can also amplify energy. They can focus it. They can transmute it. They can store it, refract it, and magnify it. Crystals are used in things like computers. A lot of technological things on a turntable. Now that they're back in vogue, we find a crystal on the needle that reads the records. They're made out of diamonds. So crystals have a lot of capabilities, ones that we don't often think of. They are used medically in different ways. Maybe not so much in our culture, but in other cultures. For example, there is a thing referred to as a biomat. A biomat is something that a lot of healers use. It's kind of the size of a massage table. So it's this thing that it looks like a pad that you put on top of a massage table. And the biomat does two things. they inside there is it is comprised of crushed amethyst, and it also uses far infrared rays. In Asia, these are used a lot for healing. I actually have one. They're very expensive. And it's wonderful to lay on. If you have aches and pain, it's very good for arthritis and all of that. So it's the combination of the crushed amethysts plus the infrared light or whatever, heat, I guess is the best way to describe it, that is very good for arthritis, aching joints, all of that. I have worked with acupuncturists that use the far infrared heat in different ways. There are lamps, there are other things that will impart that. So that is one way that it is used. One of the books that I refer to in the ebook, and I'll make a reference to it later on again, talks about this in a little bit more detail, talks about the medical applications and the more scientific applications of crystals. So, you know, a lot of people might think, oh, it's a woo-woo thing, but it really isn't. You know, there are so many applications of crystals. Those of you that are older and may remember the Superman movies of the 70s, the ones with Christopher Reeve, may remember that there's a wonderful scene in one of the first movies where he goes to his cave in the North Pole, and it's all crystals. And the crystals contain information. And I mean, that was pretty amazing that in the 70s, you know, you had this kind of thing. And I remember being fascinated with that series of movies. And, you know, instead of computers, he had this cave of crystals that contained all the information, all the history, everything that he needed was in those crystals. Crystals are also used in solar power or in conjunction with solar power, laser power, in bioelectricity, and really they are capable of creating specific vibratory frequencies, and that's one of the reasons that they're very important. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of how crystals are used and can be used and so forth. Marcel Vogel is a very interesting person. He was a scientist who worked with IBM for over 27 years. And he did extensive research on crystals and their properties and documented them from a scientific point of view. I mean, he worked for IBM. And he ascertained that crystals have an ability to amplify thought patterns. And so he found that they would be very useful in meditative situations and things like that. And I have one here that I can show you. This is actually not a real Vogel, but they're kind of shaped like that. So they have all these facets. Can't remember how many they're supposed to have. But you'll notice that there are points on either end of these. And these are very powerful to use in healing situations and meditative situations and things like that. So if you want to know more about that, you know, Google Marcel Vogel and find out what he, you know, some of the research and the work that he did with that. But just think that it really amplifies energy. So when I want to shift my consciousness in a certain way, I will use certain crystals and have. So working with something like this, if you have two of them, one in each hand. And by the way, if you want crystals, healingcrystals.com is your place, is your one-stop shopping for anything that you would want. And it's where I have gotten all of my crystals for the last 12, 13 years since they've been in existence. So that is the place to go. So if you want to shift your consciousness in a particular way, I choose to meditate with specific crystals. Double terminated crystals are those that have points on either end are very, very, very powerful. This is a Tibetan crystal. It also, as you can notice, it has things on the inside. This is double terminated. And this piece is very powerful, as are, you know, many crystals. And you will be drawn to certain ones. At certain times in my life, I have been drawn to certain crystals. Working with grids is something that a lot of healers do. And you can have, they tend to be very geometric in here's a basic grid. I actually kind of printed this out for you to look at, so I can't see you right now. But this is a basic grid. You can lay it under a table. I've used it when I meditate. If I'm working on someone, I can lay a grid pattern. You don't have to use one. You don't have to use a paper thing. You can lay out a configuration, whatever it is that you're drawn to doing. I think what's very important is that you work intuitively. So really make a point of experimenting. In my meditation corner, which is off to the side of this room, I have crystals on this table, some very powerful pieces that I have used over the years. So throughout the centuries, crystals have been used by different healers. One way that they are used is to work with the chakras, which are energy centers in our bodies. So it's beyond the scope of this particular session for me to really explain what that is. But again, you can do a research on that, and you can work with that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that right now. And in fact, I'm going to read a little section from the ebook to just give you a little flavor. And this is an exercise to ascertain and intuit the healing properties of crystals. So if you have any that are in front of you right now, you can play with them. If not, you can imagine. But I'm just going to read this little section from the ebook, which will give you a little idea of what is contained in there. And then we're going to talk a little bit about chakra work and using the crystals before we begin to wrap things up in a few moments. Lay out several stones or crystals in a table before you. First, note if you are drawn to any particular one. If so, pick it up. Note how the crystal feels in your hand. Does it feel warm, tingly, or cold? Do you experience any other sensations as you hold it? Make note of these. See if another crystal draws you or calls to you. Repeat the same process until you have picked all of the crystals up. It is very common for you to pick up a crystal that is visually appealing and reflective of the healing properties you may have need of. As you explore using crystals and noting their properties, you will begin to intuit which ones you are drawn to using or carrying. When you finish the exercise, look up the properties of the crystals you were drawn to and see if it speaks to you. So a lot of times when I go to a store, if I am, going to buy anything, I wait for something to speak to me, whether it be a crystal, flowers. I don't just go buy flower. They literally speak to me. You have to learn to listen to things and see what you are drawn to. The interesting thing, as I noted, is that oftentimes you're drawn to exactly what it is that you need. So kind of an interesting thing to consider. A lot of times when I'm drawn to something, I will go check my crystal Bible and then realize, oh wow, that's exactly what I need right now. So that's just a very interesting thing to consider. Now, as I talked, I just mentioned just a moment ago, working with the energy centers is really important. Sometimes I will lay myself on a floor and meditate. I usually sit, but I might lay crystals on my forehead on various energy centers that I feel are not perhaps a little out of whack or whatever. So that's one way you can work with them on yourself. A healer will do that on another person also. And I just want to very briefly, again, this is beyond the scope of this session, very briefly talk about the 7 energetic centers and some of the crystals that you can use on those centers. So for example, starting at the base of the spine, we have the root chakra. And one easy way to kind of keep track of that is that each one of these energy centers has colors that are associated with that. So you can pick up the crystal stones or gems that reflect that color. So for example, the colors with the base of the spine are black, brown, deep red. So crystals like tourmaline, smoky quartz, obsidian, onyx, all of those would be appropriate there. And again, the ebook has some charts one per page, that will have each one of the chakras will tell you the colors, and also what's recommended. Now, that being said, you could use other things, and if you're drawn to using something on a particular place on your body, that's fine too. Sometimes I have done sessions where I've used the same crystal on each one of the 7 chakras, if you really want to highlight things. So the second chakra, which is at the sacrum or sacral, which deals with the pelvic area and so forth, you could use things, and red and orange are the colors associated there. So something like ruby, gold tiger eye, garnet, those are golden topaz, those are some examples. The third chakra is the solar plexus, the navel. That is our gut, all right? So that's where oftentimes we feel things emotionally. When people say, I've been kicked, and I feel like I've been kicked in the gut. So that's a very important center. It's the place of our power. So things such as yellow citrine, fluorite, peridot, malachite, there are all kinds of, things that you can use there. The fourth chakra is the heart, and the colors normally associated with the heart are green, pink, or red even. So jade, rose quartz, things like that are very appropriate to use there if you're dealing with a lot of emotional things and so forth. The fifth chakra is our throat, the thyroid, also with our voice, being able to speak our truth. Colors associated there are blue and green and light blue, so gems such as celestite, blue topaz, turquoise, aqua, there's, again, aquamarine, things like that, even clear crystal. The sixth chakra, the sixth, third eye, which is the place of deep intuition. Indigo and deep purple are colors that are associated with this plate, that particular energetic center. So sapphire, lapis lazuli, sodalite, amethyst. And then the seventh chakra, which is at the crown, and is the way that we interface with the divine, with higher consciousness, levels of consciousness, vibration, and so forth. Light purple, deep purple, white, clear. Again, amethyst, you could use that again. Pearl, clear quartz, and so forth. So those are just some examples of things. And again, in the in this ebook, The Healing Power of Crystals, which is available at healingcrystals.com on the homepage for $4.95. It's a wonderful little book to just have available in PDF form, to just have and make reference to. And as I said, it has a very extensive bibliography at the end of that. So as we start to near our conclusion, let me say that crystals can also be used to enhance our workspace. So for example, as I mentioned, in this room, there are a lot of crystals. I also have them in my bedroom throughout the course of the house, in many different places. It is important to know that you do need to clear them if you use them pretty regularly. Some of them can be cleared with water, but not all, because if they're porous, they shouldn't be. Sunlight, moonlight, this is a new moon today. So very appropriate for making new beginnings and clearing crystals. They can also be programmed. You can give them a little task. You can, for example, program to keep everything else clear in your space. So it's really amazing what you can do with them. As I mentioned, I have many crystals throughout the course of my house, minerals and so forth. So, if you're drawn to that, great. And again, if you need a source for finding crystals, healingcrystals.com is a wonderful place to go to. So again, just want to make sure that you realize that they do need to be cleared and programmed and so forth, because they can attract negative energy, and it's important to clear certain ones, particularly the ones that do attract that kind of thing. If you are interested in the historical applications of crystals in healing work, there's a wonderful book that is called Gemstone Energy Medicine by Michael Katz. And again, these books are listed at the back of the ebook. So anyway, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Obviously, this is, you know, a little intro overview. I want to thank you all again for tuning in from wherever it is that you're tuning in, and we'll look at questions here in a moment. So feel free to ask them. I'm not quite sure if I know what I'll be doing, but anyway, I'll figure it out. Just want to remind you again, for those of you that tuned in, if you go to my site, www.meditationsimple.com, on the home page, there is a spring special for my meditation ebook. For those of you who find it difficult to meditate, it's called Meditation Pure and Simple, 3 easy lessons, and I guarantee that you'll be able to, you know, pick up meditation if you have found it difficult. So again, that special is there, and I think that's it. So now I guess we will do some questions. So I see a question here from Pamela Miles. What is the best way to store your crystals? That's a good question. For many years, I had many crystals, and I actually bought these special bins to store them because I could not have them all out. And frankly, you know, the energy affected me. So I had to, you know, I had them stored that way. But I have actually given most of my crystals away, and I kept a set of the ones that are most important to me, and they're out. They're just out in this room. It's interesting, as I've had perfect strangers who come to this room, and sometimes they're overwhelmed by the energy that is in this room. I meditate in this room. I have meditated in this room for almost 30 years, and I've done a lot of healing work in this room. So there's a lot of really good energy in this room. So what I would say ultimately is store them in whichever way feels best to you. You know, with energy and crystal work and all of that, you have to work intuitively. So it's what does your intuition tell you? And go with that. You know, if you're trying to transport them, then obviously, you know, that's an issue. Another question, which one is your favorite crystal and why? Well, I think amethyst purple ones have always been among my favorite, but I love quartz crystals. I probably have more quartz than anything else in here, but then there's some very interesting pieces that I have. Moldavite, and I don't have a piece handy, but Moldavite actually is... it's believed to be extraterrestrial. It did not originate here. It came either in a kind of as a meteorite type thing. It's green, and it looks like almost like glass. Like it's a very strange thing. But I have some polished Moldavite that looks, it's like gem quality. And about 12 years ago, I wore it every day in like a triangular kind of piece every day for. Oh my God, and I think a course of a year, and it really amped up a lot of things for me. So some of the questions are going a little bit too fast for me, and I don't know how to bring them back. But I think somebody asked something about toxic. Easiest way to clean a large amethyst. I have to tell you, the way I clear them is I hold them in my hand and I give them intent, or I give them Reiki energy. So I don't do all this fancy stuff that people do, because I really believe it's intent. Do you use selenite wands? I used to. I don't use wands as much anymore. I do have them placed in my room. So that's probably the best way that you know, rather than working with crystals on one-on-one, I just have them in the room, and I just figure they do their thing. You know, they have their own intelligence, and I just figure they do what they need to do. So my website again is meditationsimple.com. That's the easiest one, and that will link you to my other websites, but basically that's my meditation site, and it will link you to everything else that you need to know and about me. And also on healingcrystals.com, I have a little practitioner section also. Can they touch the waters in elixir? I am I'm imagining that you're referring to crystals. And again, I think it depends on what you're talking about. If it's a quartz, you can, they're basically indestructible. But some things are porous, and water shouldn't touch them. So yeah, you really need to know about the properties, and that's where a book such as this one, if any of you came in later, and I know you're seeing it backwards, the Crystal Bible will tell you which ones you should not immerse in water and things like that. Best crystal for protection. Shield from negative energy. And again, I would say what you're drawn to. I have a friend who only likes to wear fluorite, uses that for everything. I've worn different things at different times. I don't really wear crystals anymore, but as I mentioned, I have them in the room, and I just figure they do their work. So best way to use crystals. And again, I say trust your intuition. For many years, I would carry them in my pocket, and I just figure there they are. I don't think there's a right way or wrong way to do anything. Some people will write books and they will say, this is the way you have to do things. I've always been kind of a rule breaker that way, and I've always been a person who works very intuitively. So I just kind of go with whatever my gut tells me to do. So I would say trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom in working with this. That's really the best way. So that's what I would suggest. How to tell a fake. So I am gathering that you mean like a fake crystal. That's interesting. Geez, I don't know, because I've never bought crystals from a place that's not reputable, unless I'm drawn to a particular piece. So I've never really worried about that. But that's a good question. I don't know. I guess I'm not being very helpful. What is the best way to recharge my crystals? The best way. And again, I like to now, I have taught Reiki for over 20 years. So I just like to hold them in my hands and give them healing energy. Now, whether or not you're a Reiki practitioner, I don't think really matters. I think it's intent. So if you're drawn to that, that's a way to do it. So crystals with pets. That's a good question. Some animals are not going to sit for crystals or healing work. So I think it depends on the animal, because they're as different as people are. I saw a question there on crystals with throat cancer. And what I would suggest is looking at all the various crystals that are good for the throat and see which ones you're drawn to the most. Because I think really that's what makes it... I don't want to say work, but it's really what you're drawn to that is going to... You're drawn to something for a reason. It's because you need it. Why don't you wear crystals anymore? Good question. So I have gotten away from wearing a lot of jewelry, and mainly because I'm more sensitive, and also because I didn't feel I needed to anymore. I felt that they did the work that needed to be done in me, and some things I would wear for a certain amount of time, and then they would break on their own. And for me, that was a sign that the work that they were supposed to do for me in terms of clearing was done. So can they be washed with soap? Sure, but again, not all crystals can be, you can't use water with all of, all the various gems and so forth. So you just need to kind of know. I put them in the sun or in the soil to recharge. Absolutely, that's a good way to do it. Water. The sunlight, moonlight, all of that is very good. So can you wear too many? Well, I suppose that's possible, but I guess the way I feel about it is maybe you needed them, And again, I went through phases where I wore a lot of stuff. And but at the time I was going through a lot of clearing and growing and whatever, and then I just felt, it was done. So what is your opinion on pyrite? I have a couple pieces of them, or did at some point, and I don't have one opinion or not. Some people are really drawn to them. Can some cancel each other out? Can some cancel each other out when held together? I don't think so. I always believe that things are complementary in life. So I don't believe in right, wrong, this is good, that is bad, this is, I just think things are complementary. And you put two things together that have wonderful properties, and I think that they're going to complement and enhance each other. Which to use with excitable children? That's a good question. I don't know if crystals necessarily have negative energy, but they certainly can store it. So that's one thing to consider. Let's see. If you've, Tamara, I just missed yours. What do you do with the broken crystals? Good question. So sometimes if something has broken and done its work, I return it to the ground. I give it thanks for the work that it did. And then I might bury it or something like that, But I always give anything that broke, I give it thanks for the work that it did. So I am grateful for that. If children break them with a hammer, well, they broke them with a hammer, I guess. Best crystal to hold in your hand while meditating, whatever speaks to you. And at different times in my life, it's been different things. What if you don't feel any energy? What does that mean? Nothing. You don't have to feel energy for something to work. So that doesn't matter. Which collect negative energy? One that you really need to clear is malachite. That is very good at drawing out negative energy, but you got to make sure you clear it. Whether they're polished or unpolished doesn't really matter. Obsidian can calm excitable energy. Snowflake. I like both of those. I haven't used them in a while, but they're also, to me, very grounding. I've got trays and bowls everywhere. So do I. I have crystal bowls in here and a lot of instruments and things like that. So, okay, I think we have gone way over what we were supposed to. It's been about 40 minutes. So again, just as a reminder, if you go to meditationsimple.com, my ebook on meditation is available for $2.49. Look for the spring special. If you want crystals, healingcrystals.com is your place. If you want the ebook that I based my comments on, The Healing Power of Crystals, that is available at healingcrystals.com on their homepage for $4.95. And again, if you do you let other people touch them before making them as a gift? Well, it depends. So if you have any other questions, you can certainly reach me through my website. I am by no means any expert on crystals, but thank you so much for tuning in. And I'm hoping that some of this was helpful for you. So thanks again. All righty. Bye.